Yes, ladies and gentlemen, all rise because court is now in session. It is Judgment Day. You know what that means. Marc Cairney is in the building and ready to cast judgment over the rather large news story this week, shall we say. So yes, obviously tonight David's not available, so I'm going to be standing in as the moderator, mediator, whatever you want to call it in this case. So first of all, Marc, thanks for inviting me on, mate, because I've not been on in a few days as well, actually.
No, you're very welcome, Phil. It's good to get you on and have another wee show with you. I think I've been on the show with you for a wee bit, yeah.
We've
A few
definitely not
weeks
done
now
a
anyway, mate, so it's
done a
always good to have a
two-man
wee
show
chin
for
wag.
quite a while. We've done a
Aye.
few in the past, but it's been quite a while, so that'll be good to chew the fat over. And there's a lot of fat to be chewed tonight because it's an ever-changing story from hour to hour. But yes, that's and usually, folks, as you know, when it comes to Judgment Day, we'll put a wee post out there saying, get your questions in and so on. But let's be honest, there's probably one major story that we're probably there's no point really. There's one thing that we need to talk about, so that will be obviously the main topic tonight. But of course, if you have anything else that you wish to throw in there tonight, then by all means get it in the old live chat. Any other hot burning topics about the club that you wish to discuss, then throw it in there. But of course, just quickly before we get started and get into this, yes, just remember, folks, obviously do all the good stuff, which obviously like, comment, share, subscribe. Obviously, head over to our sponsors, piesports.com, use the code BUS1888, get yourself 12.5% off. And of course, you can go over to our other sponsor, ED Pharmacy.co.uk, if you're so inclined. And if you use the code BUS10 to get 10% off on any orders there. Now, before we get started as well, obviously with Ange leaving the building, he may now be gone, but I'll tell you something, his cough definitely lives on because my throat is quite parched. So before my throat completely dries up here right now, I'm going to hand it over to the judge himself. So Marc, it looks like you have something to say, do you?
Oh, definitely, mate. I think we should start the show off and first of all by saying how much we respect the job Ange did. You know what I mean? I think every Celtic fan respects the job that he did, and I think when you're casting an opinion on the man or the job he done at Celtic, I think you've got to think about one thing, and it's as a football career and as a managerial career. Sorry, nobody can judge the man for taking the job. Phil, I think we can all separate the fact that he took a job that was probably 3, 4, 5 times his salary. The ambition managing the Premier League is probably for, I'd say every manager wants to manage in there and every player wants to play there to a certain degree. So I can't judge Ange on that. I don't think any Celtic fan can hold any judgment on him for that. It's a separate issue, I think, for some of the bad taste that you're seeing on Twitter, seeing on Facebook, probably seeing on supporters buses and on fans forums. My biggest gripe with the Ange situation, Phil, and I've called it on the podcast before, and I've certainly called it on Twitter, it's just the utter shite he's been saying, Phil, you know what I mean? And it's not that I think the guys came in and you know, just totally being like a Brendan Rodgers figure. And I think the Brendan Rodgers stuff before, I think that was kind of hyped up with people rewriting history. The guy didn't kiss the badge every home match. The guy was there clapping the fans at every home and away match. It was the Celtic fans that took him into their hearts. And I think there's the same with Ange. I think he played to the gallery and the Celtic fans lapped it up, gobbled it up. Regurgitated it and then swallowed it again, mate. And I think the Celtic fans, I don't blame them, but I think they've only got themselves to blame for that. And I mean, you talk about a man here who he must have Googled Celtic straight away. I'm sure he knew Celtic, but he must have Googled Celtic's origins and seen straight away about the immigrant roots and used that as a way to buy into the Celtic fans and buy into their hearts, because there was a big bit of anger about how he came to Celtic, and the Howe deal was really left a foul taste in Celtic fans' throat and mouth. That was coupled by 2-3 years later, it being reported that this guy who hadn't heard it before, that was 5,000 points in Scrabble, was going to take over. We were all worried about it, so he had to ingratiate himself to the Celtic fans, and I think he started off that in that vein, and he never stopped. You know what I mean? Even getting into his time, always be press conferences and he was saying wee things, and playing to the gallery. I feel like he was absolutely saying these things, and the Celtic fans laughed it up. I mean, he set a few records straight a few weeks last week there, and he kind of let the press know that he wasn't happy with a few things. He also mentioned Michael Beale in about 10-15 interviews. He was replying to some of the things that he said about him, but not once. This is one thing. Not once did he sit in a press conference and defend the Celtic fans. The Celtic fans' name was pulled through the mud when the Queen died. Celtic fans' names was called pulled through the mud in the celebrations last season we won the league. We're accused of wrecking statues, which didn't happen. We're accused of wanting destruction in Glasgow City. And none of it was true. Not once did our manager stick up for us. And Neil Lennon, for all his badness, had the Celtic fans' backs at every turn. You know what I mean? Didn't just sit there and back the question off. I thought he was very, very clever in every word he used. I think you mentioned his cough there, Phil. I think he was coughing, he was composing himself and getting himself ready for his next half of his sentence. That guy was a very clever man, and he didn't speak for the heart a lot of times. Sometimes I think he spoke through his arms, but every word that he said, I think, was very articulated, and he knew what he was saying. So I don't think he said a lot of the things he said about his love for the club and all this stuff. I don't think he said that on a whim. I think he was saying that knowing he was playing to the gallery. The way I see any situation regarding Celtic, I look at it through a prism of how I would look at it through if I was an opposition fan. And that is how you normally get the happy medium. There's always two sides to a story, and the truth's always in the middle, I say. And some of the things that I heard coming through his mouth, I stopped listening to him a long time ago. I've said on the pod, this isn't me speaking in retrospectively or trying to rewrite history. I've said for a long time, Phil, you know what I mean? I took stick for it that I just didn't buy it, you know what I mean? And it's not just the fact that I'm some jilted scorn lover at the stand at the aisle. I'm no coming for that side. I can totally see why the guy left. I would actually question the guy's ambition, but the man sat in a press conference 3 weeks ago. He was asked about a certain player, and he turned around and said, "You are very, very, very wrong." When he was asked about a Celtic target, he sniggered. And what we found out the last couple of days is these negotiations have took a matter of months. This wasn't something he sat in that boardroom. He sat in scouting missions. He's done scouting reports on players, and known fine well that there's a good chance he was out the door. He's sat and he's soaked up every bit of adulation this club's thrown at him. And again, been heavily involved in organising, or at least heavily involved in the opposition pick for a tour of Japan, knowing fine well he wasn't going to be on that plane, Phil. I just find that a wee bit distasteful. And we, as a Celtic fans, you don't come into this country, player or manager or any other position in the club, soak in all that adulation, soak in this 24/7 group of fans that you have got, but then be disgusted when it goes against you, because you can't have it both ways. We are Celtic fans. We're among the most passionate football fans in the world, I'd say. We don't just go to the games on Saturday and then get up the road and phone a takeaway. We think about Celtic every minute, every spare minute. You know what I mean? We wake up during the night and the first thing we think about is Celtic most days. You know what I mean? And don't be upset or disgruntled when Celtic fans see that their love has been abused, or at least been played on in some way. You know what I mean? It's like the only way I can probably put it into like some sort of story or whatever is like when a woman gets dumped, she puts that much into it that she's ends up becoming angry and bitter when it goes tits up. And I don't think that's the case in terms of Celtic fans are just trying to find a way of being upset about this. I mean, we've seen players go and we can say, like, thanks for your time, thanks for the memories, and we've done it with managers too. I mean, we all wish Martin O'Neill the best. We all know he left for certain reasons, but we were all gutted. You know what I mean? I know his time was up, Phil, but it's no just beyond the Celtic fans to wish a departing manager good luck. I don't think it was the fact that he waited to the cup final. This story was stewing on, and he sat in a press conference and said, categorically, nobody would ever come to say to me, they would never dare come and mention a position other than this Celtic game coming up to me, because they just wouldn't dare doing it. And we all knew that he had at least 2 interviews before he took the job Monday morning, Phil, and that didn't happen. That didn't happen Sunday, Phil. I can assure you. These situations, this would have been a very time-sensitive subject for Tottenham Hotspur. They've been waiting like 70 days without a manager or whatever it was.
Yeah.
They would have known their fans are getting anxious. They've got season tickets to sell, and they've got fans to appease, and they couldn't have been seen to just let this rumble on. I think if he got asked the question in January, he would have left. Now, listen, just quickly before I go back to you, Phil. There's a very interesting article I read last night with an Australian news broadcaster. I don't know when it was written or when it was released, but it only came on Twitter last night. It would kind of surprise me where the if it's an old story, it would surprise me that it's only just been released now. But seemingly the team that he won the league with in Australia, I think it's Melbourne Victory, I remember it was.
It was either them or Brisbane Roar.
But he did the exact same thing. They had a championship game or a cup final, and the same story was happening. He was getting mentioned to go to another job, the bigger job he was going to go to, and they did a trophy parade, and there was just rife rumours that he was gone. He denied it, the rest of it. And then it turns out, weeks later, months later, or in his book, or whatever it was, the truth came out that he was actually all along having talks with this club and took the job, and never told the players, never told the club he was leaving, but he knew he was leaving and didn't want to spoil the title party. But the truth of the matter is he wasn't handed the job until after the season was over. And I think if he was offered the job in January, he would have been off skates, the same as Brendan Rodgers. The only thing what Brendan Rodgers did was he at least secured Celtic with a large paycheck. Celtic have managed to secure £5 million, I've read, but that wasn't because he Ange having any sense of loyalty to the club. Or I think as Russell said the other day, that he signed the contract that Celtic gave him because it suited Celtic, but when it suited Celtic for him to sign a 5-year deal or a 4-year deal, he decided no, it's no your game anymore. It's my ball and I'll play by my rules. And that's just my view on it, Phil. And I'm really angry about it. I don't know if I want to ask you how you feel about it, and does any of these my feelings strike a chord with you, mate, or are you quite somber about it?
Yeah, well, overall, I'm kind of treating it the same as how I felt after Brendan Rodgers left, where while it was disappointing how it ended, it's just like, well, look, there was still a lot of success. I try and focus on that. But you did bring up an interesting point there, something that I think we need to look at is how much did the club know in advance? Do you think this snuck up on them? Obviously, it didn't. One of the big clues that I think was there, because we know the expression hidden in plain sight, and this is interesting because obviously you, Mark, you're a season ticket holder like myself, so you're used to the whole system when it comes to season ticket renewals. So you might have noticed that obviously this year, though they did their usual season ticket renewal open, or is now open, you've got until this date to renew, which is totally normal, totally par for the course, nothing out of the ordinary. But if you've been a season ticket as long as myself and a Marc have, you know that once that deadline's creeping up, what usually happens is Celtic will put out a wee email saying, we've extended it by a week, 2 weeks, something like that. But this year they kept on putting wee idle threats out there of, there'll be no extension. And again, you just kind of look at it and go, they've said this stuff before, and then you get like 2 days before and they extend it. But they didn't extend it this time. It did close on the 31st of May. A matter of days before the cup final, and a matter of days before all this happened. Had they extended it another week or 2 weeks, which is what they normally do, all of this would be happening in amongst the season ticket renewal window. So do you think the club were like, we need to get season ticket money banked and make sure it's all in there because they had a feeling that this was coming? Do you think that was something that they may have been doing there with that one?
I think they've got wind of this as early as April, Phil. I mean, and I think that's definitely been on their cards, on their minds. I mean, in a season that I can remember, Celtic have always. In fact, I think there was one season that they put the deadline back twice, which wasn't fair on the people on the waiting list. And because I said at the time when I seen the email, I thought, I know why, Phil. I had the money in my drawer, but most folk need a wee bit of notice to try and pull together hundreds and hundreds of pounds. You know what I mean? And I thought it at the time. I found it a bit. I thought it's a bit insensitive considering we're in the middle of a a cost of living crisis. You know, there's folk buying 2 and 3 season cards in one house. You know what I mean? It's a lot of money, and I thought, oh God, Celtic are really no playing the game here when we're supposed to be a family club. But it did come across when all these rumours started that the cynic in me did think was this linked. Also, one thing as well, like one of the main red flags for thinking back was, now in the 2 years that Ange's been at Celtic, I hadn't heard his agent, Phil, and that guy was on the Celtic Park pitch celebrating the championship, and I thought,
Frank, somebody, I've seen the name doing the rounds, and
it's like Copolali or something, isn't it? It sounds Italian, but when you say it out loud, when you read it, it sounds Australian for some reason, but I don't know what it is, but Mangali, is it? Frank Mangali or something?
I've no idea. I just seen it again. You know, we're in that stage now, Mark, with the WhatsApp group screen grabs are doing the rounds, and I seen this guy Frank something quoted, and I'm like, who?
No, do you know? But I think there's a truth to that, Phil, because the WhatsApp stuff, anybody that falls for that, you deserve to fall for that. I think it's a lot of shit. But one thing that's true is I've never seen or heard Ange's agent. You know, never. Honestly, I've no. But he was on the pitch, and do you know something? Part of that WhatsApp story, which was a lot of shit, was saying that Celtic as a club weren't all that impressed the fact that he was there on the pitch and he was there. Well, because he considered the fact that he probably already was negotiating quite strongly for him to get out of Celtic. But maybe they weren't happy, because one thing's for sure, Phil, was see when this agent's been pimping him out to Tottenham Hotspur, Celtic would have found out about that very quickly, because the football's a small world. People start making phone calls, people start doing background checks, people start asking questions of people. And that gets back to people. And I think Celtic are a very big club. In fact, the guy who owns Celtic, I'm sure he's got tentacles all over London. I mean, he probably does a lot of his business in London. So it's the guys who own Celtic and own Spurs, they don't just operate in football. They've got many businesses and many associates. So these things get back to folk very quickly. And I feel like Celtic, I think Celtic have been blindsided by this. I really do. I think I think the Desmond picture, I think that we spoke about the time and we said firmly that we believed that it was put there on purpose by the club. I think that's fair. With the billionaires, basically high level security, I mean, there was 2 security vans there when he was there. They don't allow, as I say, Tim on Twitter to go in and walk in and take photos, mate. They know exactly who's in the room, mate, and especially in the Celtic Park foyer, which is the size of my kitchen. It's very small, really, when you're inside it.
Yeah.
And so that was leaked out there for a reason. More so because I think Celtic, the narrative is, not just the narrative, because it's been confirmed, Celtic tried to keep the guy. I think Dermot Desmond has took it that seriously that he's coming on his private jet or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And he's waited up to Celtic Park and he spoke to him. No offered him $300,000 for the women's team, and I think that's just a lot of shit. But I think he's spoken to him. He's offered a counter offer. I think either Celtic matched the wages or still when you've stayed, because as I said, he just can't knock the ambition of London. I'm sure his wife would fancies Harrods and all these places, doesn't he? I mean, but it's just better for me, Phil, because I think the guy's just spun us one heap of brown jobbies the full time he's been here. Now, I didn't fall for his stuff, as I says. A lot of his stuff was lapped up. I said that We Never Stop was our version of We Are the People. I found it a very cringy, throwaway statement when I felt, Celtic have been built on teams that have scored last minute winners, and that's been a Celtic staple for since at least the 80s. But I mean, even you look at one of the most important goals Celtic ever scored was the Scottish Cup winning goal with Billy McNeil when we beat Aberdeen, I think it was 3-2 by the Finland, and all the Celtic players says that was the start. They knew that Celtic were only a winning formula under Jock Stein. That was a last minute winner. You know what I mean?
1965.
Yeah. There you go. And do you know what, Phil? And that's always been a staple of Celtic. So I think him coining that phrase was a throwaway statement in training that was flung out there in a YouTube video, and Celtic just seemed to laugh it up, and the fans just seemed to see it. And I found it very quickly. I found it very cringy, mate. I really did. And not just that, Phil. I feel like the people who were vulnerable to take in his shite, they lapped up that much that they almost became hoodwinked by the guy, and they're going to be feeling really silly. Not just because the guy's left them leg on their face, but they feel like the guy's just personally shafted them and all. I mean, you do take things personally because Celtic means that much to you that everything the day that they strike a chord with you, it can upset you, mate, and you take things personally. Of course you do.
Football fans were very passionate people.
Well, football fans were that passionate and were that tuned into our club that we'll buy a bottle of water for twice the price if it's got a Celtic sticker on the bottle. You know what I mean? But that gullible, and we don't even moan about it, Phil, majority of the time. So you can't have it both ways, as I always say. And I think I don't know how long the show's going to last today. We'll put it out there. I think maybe if you've got any comments or questions for the viewers or anything you want to ask me, we can move on to that, mate, if you don't mind.
No worries. I've got I'm keeping my eye on it. I've got a couple of things with the old favoured star on it anyway that we'll come to. But yeah, overall it does just feel like it's a bit of an unfinished job. I've heard a few people on other pods saying that, and I totally agree. It just feels does feel very unfinished. 2 years in, you did think that the third year would have been a banker for him, and then he would head off into the sunset. I'd say my outlook is, look, he still gave us 2 great years. I thoroughly enjoyed Saturday. I know a few people yourself have said it. I know Liam said it on the show that watching the game on Saturday, you always had that thought in the back of your head. But I still enjoyed the celebrations and just had that attitude of, what will be. But I was very in the build up to the cup final. I was anytime I appeared on this show, I was very much like, I think it'll be fine. I think it'll be okay. And now that it's happened, I'm just kind of like, I don't know how to describe it really. It's just like, well, it's happened. It's over to Celtic now to see what happens, what they do next, and that is of course the thing
you
that
put a lot of trust in them, Phil, and I love your attitude because you put a lot of trust in Celtic. And one of the last thing, one of the Phil situation that I forgot to mention is, I mean, I do remember like Rodgers. I'm not trying to compare the two situations because I've did enough of it on Twitter just for the show hypocrisy, not because I actually feel like it's the same. But one of the sticks that was used to beat Brendan Rodgers' reputation at Celtic was the fact that he tried to decimate the backroom staff, take Chris Davies and Cole to it. They were his men.
Yeah, they were. He brought them in.
Now, this guy's trying to take Celtic men. Guys who he walked into, a man who doesn't actually take, in his full career, he's never took anybody with him, really. He's trying to take Stratton, the analysis boy. He's trying to take Kennedy. I mean, there's talk of the ball boys gone and all. You know what I mean? The lot of them, he's trying to take them all. And, on the man, I'll say this about man all, like, I think for me, which might be a bit satisfying for me, I must admit, I think his biggest strength is his biggest weakness, mate. I think when he goes down to England, I've mentioned his in-game management multiple times in here in the Scottish League.
You have mentioned that, yeah. You've been consistent in that one, to be fair.
I've harked back even to his very first couple of games when he refused to take his Myler Sorrow off away to Betis and cost us a victory. He did his last away game. He let Dyson Maeda get sent off when all your Twitter had 20 quid on him to get sent off, mate. It was that obvious, and I feel like Brendan Rodgers can win a match with a notepad sitting on the dugout. Brendan Rodgers can't. Ange Postecoglou can't. And when you're up against really, really talented in-game managers and really, really talented managers in England who are reactive and proactive, I think that's where he's going to struggle, mate. Because I think he's got an excellent philosophy and an excellent structure to himself, but his structure heavily relies on dominating teams, hammering teams. But see, you come up against a level one opponent who are maybe 80% of the season playing counter-attacking football and have got the ability to turn your defence like that. See if you go 1-0 down in the first 20 minutes. It's not going to be as easy as just dominating the ball and waiting for openings to happen. And I don't think at Spurs you can rely on teams just letting you in the back door. You know what I mean? I genuinely believe that. I think it might be ironic and it might be a wee bit hilarious for me that he spent half his time at Celtic telling everybody that he was supposed to be sacked by Christmas. And the funny thing is, I think this time he might be sacked by Christmas, and that could come back to haunt him. I can see a lot of videos coming up with that. And I'll repeat it again. He spent half his time defending himself and half his time defending comments made against him. Not once did the guy ever defend the Celtic fan base when they were dragged through the mud on multiple occasions, or dragged through the press, mud by the press, and that's stuck in my throat for a while, mate.
Aye, no, so you've been very, very consistent, and a few people like Demolition Days are saying that there, backing you up, saying you have criticised along the way and been consistent in that one. But yeah, you're right about the time down there. You've seen managers down in England, if they don't get off to a flying start, they're sacked after a couple of months. I mean, I don't wish anything bad on the guy at all. Fair enough, if he goes down there and he smashes it, so be it. And it doesn't affect me. It's all about what Celtic do next.
Yeah.
But you're right. It can be a ruthless one, and especially at Tottenham. Daniel Levy is going to be a tough one to work under. If you thought the Celtic board could be a bit awkward at times, and as we've discussed many times, then it seems that Daniel Levy is quite a tricky one. But let's go on to some comments that I've starred. Of course, it's all about the subject that we've been talking about so far about Ange. But here's an interesting one. Kind of ties into something that I've seen in these WhatsApp group chats. We made a thing about after we won the league, we seem to have a real dip in form. And again, it goes back to that point of how early did the club know? Did the players catch wind of it? Because Stubbsy Sauce is asking, do you think is Ange going the real reason that we were gash in the last 5 games? Did the players know? Did they have that sort of attitude of, well, if you're not going to be here next season, then I'm not really that bothered? Because there was a few times after a few of after the game, some of the bad results, he was just talking about, players aren't, playing how I want them to. And he was not totally critical. Like, he did throw them under the bus and go all in, but it did seem a bit like, he's saying, they're not doing basically what I want them to do here and stuff. And it's like, was it just a case of the players were just phoning it in because the hard work was done? Which is what I thought at the time. But obviously now when you look at what's happened and trying to think that did they know? Was it a good few months in advance? Was there clues there? Is it one of these ones? I'm just watching the shows for that, do you think, Mark?
No, I think the biggest factor was Cameron Carter-Vickers. In fact, when Cameron Carter-Vickers got injured, there was 5 games of the season left, and Celtic lost a quarter of all the goals we've lost this season in 3 of those matches. In three of those matches, we lost a quarter of all the goals we conceded the full season. That isn't just because I think the biggest staple of that Celtic team, really, I think, is Cameron Carter-Vickers. I think when he's not there, they look so shaky at the back foul, and I think there's only so many times you can rely on 5 goals, and I don't think we always get 5 goals. I feel like the players who we brought in, if the first 11 was playing every week and then there was a major drop off in form, you would kind of look back and go, well, maybe there was something in the water there. But I do feel like I still genuinely feel like the performances were based on the team selection. I mean, I sorry to harp on about it, but and then that's another thing that's a wee bit disgrunting for me. He's left us with Bernabei, get ready with Kobayashi to settle in and probably get ready. He's left us with. I mentioned this a few months ago, a good few months ago on off Phil, but we've got a team identical to Ange's philosophy, and I'm not 100% sure that we've got a set of players that work with a fluid system. Or I think, like, if I mentioned this the other day, there's a Daisa Maeda want a 4-4-2 sort of rigid system, or even a 3-5-2. Does he want a 3-5-2 system? I don't know entirely sure. Phil. I think there's just so many kind of machinations that don't tend to work with the type of players we've got. And when our football relies on this kind of high press, intensive football and breaking lines and playing in wee triangles and all the rest of it, all sounds sexy, but the reality is you've got to pick and choose when you do that, and the players you've got at your disposal really dictate when you can do that. I'm not entirely sure that we've got a team that's as fluid with certain types of systems and certain managers, and I think that might be a difficult point for us, and I think that just might be my fears that we'll head for continuity and get somebody for the City group or something. But I do feel like, to answer the point quickly, I do feel like the results were probably down to the manager's tinkering, but maybe the manager was tinkering because it was 11:30 at night and he was playing Scrabble with the Waynes and he was getting tired and he just wanted the game to finish. You know what I mean? That's the only way I can put a wee analogy on it, mate.
No, that's fair dues. Another one that we've got coming. I think, to be fair, that you've already answered this one, but again, AJSC type. There's always too many letters for me. I always stumble on that one when I try to say it. So I think it's something I feel you've answered already. But yeah, if Spurs had offered Ange the job in April and demanded he take it immediately, similar to what happened to Brendan in 2019, where Leicester were like, it's now or never, and he opted for the now. Would Ange have done a Rodgers on us? Because you think about it, if that had happened, let's just go in an alternative universe and say that did happen. Spurs said, you need to take it now. And it would have left us. And he wanted to take Kennedy and Strachan and all the backroom staff that he wants to take with him. What, for the run in there at the end of the season, what would we have been left with? Who would have been stepping in and taking charge? It's quite a scary thought. So at least, he saw it out to the end, and that's good that, he remained professional to get the treble over the line and leave in a strong position. But yeah, I think your answer to that one's definitely that he would have jumped at it. You reckon if they'd
timing, Phil? Timing. I think if he was offered it even 5 weeks ago, and they said to him it's now or never. Phil, I think if he offered it in January, I think there's in Spurs Stadium there's a wee cockerel, whatever it is, with a wee gold ball underneath it. I think his private jet would have took the heat off of that. He'd been there that fast, you know that, mate. And I think he'd have flew down there, and he probably wouldn't have packed a bag. And I can't be too-faced about it. I wouldn't blame him for that. I would not blame him. I didn't blame Rodgers. I don't blame players for leaving. The only thing that gets in my throat is the fans and their support held him in a higher regard because, you know what? He sold himself to be in a higher regard. And it's like, Ange's got a legacy. And the only legacy the guy left was he came in for a short period of time. He won trophies. It'll be a figure that will divide people. He didn't leave a legend. He didn't leave an icon. But he left as somebody who maybe is a bit of a maverick in Scottish football, but
a decent word to use, maverick.
Aye, maverick, and I want to use fat piece of shit, but I'm not going to say that, mate. I will say it.
Well, you just did, so
that's exactly how I feel. I'm not going to be like a bit of an ex, but I'm just going to be a really bald, a wee voodoo doll and start putting pins through his eyes, and stealing his hair gel laughing.
Not jilted at all. No, we'll move on to another one as well. Because obviously then we then go to the big question. Now I know that Steve-O's been doing a couple of shows the last few days. Him and the boys have been going over like different options, profile and stuff, and it comes down to this. And again, it's what the board do next. But Shell is asking, who would you like to see as his replacement, Marc? So there's plenty of things flying around. This is a thing that's changing on an hour-to-hour basis because if you watch Steve-O and the lads earlier, they were talking about a few options within a matter of like an hour of them coming off the air. Some guy who's part of the City group, Des
Buckingham or something,
was sighted at Glasgow Airport and instantly jumped up in the bookie odds to like 2-1. And then a couple hours later, Brendan Rodgers was suspended betting on Brendan. And it's like, this is changing on an hour-to-hour basis. What's going on? But you've said before about the whole bookie thing, don't read too much into it because, it's basically the bookies are essentially just trying to do a bit of damage control, essentially. Yeah. So even though Brendan's had suspended odds in the last few hours, don't jump at it thinking that's a definite yet. But yeah, on you, Marc, where do you think the board's going to go with this?
Oh, I'll tell you who I want them to go with. I think there's no doubt about it. If we can accept football manager being ruthless, then I'm going to be ruthless, and I'll just say Brendan Rodgers. He will absolutely dominate this league because him as a tactician and as a reactive manager, I've never seen anybody better. Martin Neil was an absolutely phenomenal manager. He had a style of play that was, even in the early 2000s, the 3-5-2, it was a fairly new system, and he worked it magically in Scotland and Europe. He did get found out in the early stages, but he wasn't the best reactive. He wasn't very reactive on the pitch, and that's fine. You can't have it all. Football players can't have it all, and managers can't have every aspect of the game. I think Brendan Rodgers had it all in terms of Scottish football, anyway, European football. although he did get European away wins and all the rest of it, he did no bad. He managed to qualify for the Champions League through qualifiers twice in a row, which didn't happen at Celtic very often. He also got through the last stages of he got through to the group stages, the knockout stages of Europe with Celtic, and you can't really forget that. I'll just throw it off. The guy was a phenomenal manager, Phil, you know what I mean? And I think the level of player we could bring in. I know there's this perception that he's this Brendan Rodgers man, and he loves himself and all the rest of it. That all came from a Channel 5 documentary. That
I remember it, yeah.
Aye, and that came because they were into his house, Phil, and this is very important I mention this. There was a photograph, there was a painting of him, and when people were saying, who's got a photograph or a painting of himself? Well, first of all, every football players get their own names on their strips and their toilet for a start, you know what I mean? But that was actually a gift that was given to him by some disabled charity that he sponsored, and he said it was one of the most honourable things that ever happened to him. And how could I disrespect the people by not having that pride of place in my house? You know what I mean? And that guy could have put that in his shed and nobody seen it, but that guy wanted to let the people know that listen, I appreciate what you did. That's not me just buying a heap of shit. This is what came out in his book or came out in a magazine. But that's something that the guy didn't mention at the time because he probably just thought, fuck it. The guy didn't spend 100 yards every time he spoke. He was a Celtic fan, you know what I mean? Not like me and you, Phil, but he's from Northern Ireland. He grew up a Catholic, and I dare say, there's pictures of his brother inside Baird's Bar and all the rest of it. So his brother didn't go back in time and start taking photographs and fucking in case he get the Celtic job one day. Come on, you know what I mean? He's a Celtic man. And I'd take him back in a second, Phil. He's my pick of the litter. One thing I don't think I think this window last month was going to be whether Celtic progress to the next level and give Ange the tools to progress in Europe. I think this window's turned dramatically into Celtic having some sort of salvaging job on their squad, and also to try and get the right manager, keep Celtic in the position that we're standing in. And it's the harsh reality of it now. We are the ones that are going to be after some sort of rebuild, because we are going to lose first team players. And we knew that last month. We knew we were going to lose first team players.
Yeah.
I still think we're going to lose at least Hatate, and that's fine. I can stomach that. That's fine. But and then O'Reilly's seemingly going to go or not. But this has turned into.
It has.
New the game has changed, Phil.
Mm-hmm.
This has turned into Celtic needing to be the ones who get after a flying start. You know what I mean? And also Celtic need to, if the gap with the Rangers is this size, Celtic need to try and not just extend it, which was the narrative last month. We need to maintain that. We've got the Champions League riches, we've got a pot full of cash, and we've got an angry chair, an angry CEO, and no CEO, an angry owner, shall we say. And when he gets angry, things tend to happen at Celtic. And I think also Celtic are putting out there that they're not very happy with some of the situation regarding Kennedy. That doesn't happen through the normal channels by accident, Phil. Celtic are putting out there that this isn't as clean cut and by a nice man who thanked the fans for his time. This is Celtic are put out there for a very, very good reason, mate, and I think Celtic fans would do well to take that in.
Aye, it's I'm glad that you mentioned the sort of the dynamic shift on the transfer window, because a couple of weeks ago, like, you know, we're seeing all these headlines coming from the other side of the city, you know, and all their fans on Twitter. All we need is 4 or 5 signings, and then, you know, you're just kind of like, what do you think? Do you think Ange is going to sit still? We're going to obviously go out and sign players. You're not going to be playing against this Celtic squad next season. But now the whole dynamics change, because we've got a very niche squad for a very specific type of football under a very specific manager. So I know what's the topic, Brendan Rodgers and stuff like that. Like, if it did actually happen, right? There's no guarantee that, you know, this will work for him. So there's going to need to be some serious changes. We're going to lose some big players. I think obviously you've said that, like Hatate a few times, even before all this happened, you were convinced that Hatate would not be here next season. And well, there's a good chance now, if a new manager comes in and is like, I can't, you know, work with a squad the way this is built, I'm going to have to get my own players in. Things like that are a realistic possibility that could happen. Whether they go with Ange to Tottenham, who knows? I mean, I'd like to think that that's not going to happen, but again, we'll just need to wait and see on that one, because I've one of the players as well, and this was one of the comments I highlighted from Patrick McGowan, saying I'm half expecting Kyogo Natai to leave anyway, but it's Jota and CCV that concern me at the moment, and that's true, especially Cameron Carter-Vickers. That is the one that concerns me. For example, if Ange was to come looking for Carter-Vickers, there'd be some sort of irony in that, because a couple of years ago, he's deemed not good enough for Tottenham Hotspur. Then for him to go back there and then suddenly become a first-team regular at Tottenham would be quite an interesting one, but that's the guy that we need to keep. I think the fact he's injured all summer should detract anybody from trying to sign him. I think we've mentioned that before on the show, saying that as unfortunate as it is, it's maybe a blessing in disguise that he's now out for the entire summer and won't be back till probably August, I think, playing for us. So it'll maybe detract anyone from signing him. But in the future, if he continues on the sort of trajectory that he's on, he could easily be getting snapped up. And but yeah, he's so important. We've seen it in those last few games without him playing. I even said it last year in Ange's first season when we were talking about Player of the Year candidates. It's like Carter-Vickers is so important to us. And again, it was proved this season. And also Jota as well. Like for me, when Jota's on it, he is the best player in the country. I know we talk about Tati and Kyogo, but I just feel like Jota's just got that magic in him. But yeah, that two would worry me if that was the thing I was to come calling this summer. But in terms of a new manager coming in, I think Tati and Kyogo are more likely to be the ones that he would go over. I might struggle to work with them. But if they're good players, and they should be able to adapt to new systems and new managers. They should, in theory. So, but again, it's all in the hands of the Celtic board. They've got to get it right, Mark.
I think it's very possible that a Kyogo could fit into almost any system, because he's no like a number 9, he's not a number 10. He's all over the front line. Phil, you know what I mean? I think he can do almost any job, and his finishing is getting better. I think he's actually getting better. I know he's 29 soon, but he seems to me like he's hitting a patch in his career at Celtic anyway that he's not hit before. On the Carter-Vickers one, I think what might go for us is the Spurs need to sell Ange to the fans. I mean, that will take a bit of PR work over the summer. Don't get me wrong. I think Ange has googled fucking Kevin Keegan's career and all the rest of it. So he will start. He will start hitting it with all this shite that him and his dad used to watch Spurs, and he used to tell him stories. Remember, he said that his pal used to always sit down and tell him stories about Celtic. No, he didn't. He probably didn't do that, Ange. I talk shit. Anyway, but the Cameron Carter-Vickers, they need to sell Ange to him, and I think them bringing back a player that they thought was good enough would be seen as a backward step for the fans, and I think they wouldn't push that button just yet. They need him to be ingratiated by the fans, so I think that will go for Celtic. The fact that Cameron Carter-Vickers is injured, which is great for us, because nobody tends to be wanting to buy players that are injured, Phil, which is great. And the fact that I think if a manager in the APL that would go, no, he'll come good once he's fit. It will be Ange Postecoglou. And the good thing is, I don't think that'd be sanctioned up the stairs, because I think they would want to keep things, and it's probably better they could afford. I personally think he's. No, don't forget, before I say this, the Van Dijk that you see at Liverpool isn't the Van Dijk we signed, Phil, right?
That's right, I agree. Yeah, he got better with playing in England.
Yeah, I think he's the best centre-back I've ever seen at Celtic Park. I think...
Celtic Park, it's not
he's the best defender I've ever seen. Yeah. I think, even including Kieran Tierney, he's the best defender I've ever seen in a Celtic jersey. And I didn't see Danny McGrain, mate, and Paul Elliott, I couldn't tell you much about. I know he's seemingly... I think anybody a bit older than us would say he's probably one of the best we've ever had, but we never saw him, Phil. We never seen much of him anyway. And yeah, I think the guy is just a fucking class act, far too good for this league. But he's been at a lot of clubs, and I think that might go for us. I think Scott Sinclair said he'd been about a long time, and when you find a home, sometimes you take your slippers off and you just relax. And I think this guy might just have been the same mentality, and that's a good point again. On the next man, if you go in a minute.
We'll have a wee look through just now. Well, some more stuff's coming in. Obviously, we'll just continue because we're on 45 minutes. We'll try and take it to No, obviously won't go over the hour. We'll try and keep it.
We'll tell you then, Phil. We'll just do a euro. That sounds good.
That sounds good. Around hour, most of the shows are around about an hour anyway, so let's try and do that. Except for me on a Friday night where I keep you all here for about 2 hours, sometimes 3 hours. But just a wee announcement on that, by the way, if you're expecting Bustalgia on Friday night, we're taking a break this week because naturally there's a rather hot topic to talk about. So I don't think you really want to listen to me talking about old seasons and stuff like that. So Friday night, I'll speak to Russell. I've got an idea up my sleeve, so we'll probably do something else relating to the current hot topic right now. Yeah.
Well, see, the Bustalgia series, mate, it's interesting for folk that like to reminisce, especially folk that are maybe no want to get caught up too much in last week's performance against Dundee or whatever. And the good thing about Bustalgia is, as you said, it's on for quite a long time. I was on a Bustalgia show one time, and the game that was on the following day, we were on that long that it ended up on Bustalgia on the same show. That's how long it was on for. But it's a great show. Everybody wants to talk about, and it's not always good seasons. I think it's good sometimes.
I know. I've got some
sadomasochistic in yourself. Talk about the bad times at Celtic. It makes you feel a bit better about the good times.
Well, I've still got the COVID trilogy to come up. I've been promising that for a wee while now, but I'm going to do the 3 seasons, which basically, well, first of all, one that got wrecked by COVID, then the 10 in a row attempt, and then I'm going to do a season talk about Ange Postecoglou coming in and saving us. So that's the COVID trilogy. So that's going to come up. So that's quite topical, I guess, but that's one for the summer that I'll be doing. So let's see. Yeah, Stubbsy Sauce coming back in question. What's next season's budget going to look like now, guys? Now, as far as, again, I'm not a huge money expert here, to be honest, but I believe when it comes to the Champions League riches that we always talk about, that's something that gets paid out at the end of a season. But hey, we just played in the Champions League last season. It's now the end of the season, so that money from the 2022-23 season should now be in Celtic's account. Also, we're talking about the guaranteed money for this coming campaign, but again, I believe that all gets paid into clubs at the end of the season. But that can be used for deals where it's like similar to Jota and Carter Vickers, where you agree a loan deal where price, if it's going to go through, basically, we'll have that money essentially. They can use that to their advantage. But my opinion on this one, with Stubbsy Sauce asking, again, I think it's going to depend who the manager is. It's all going to depend on if Celtic go and get something quite attractive as a manager, they're going to obviously demand a big transfer, budget essentially. But if Celtic do what I'm afraid they do, which is some sort of cheap option, or it's getting a bit desperate and they pick up the phone to the City group and are like, got any managers that we can employ a bit of a cheaper option, then who knows how long's a piece of string? Could be anything. But I think in terms of there'd be a quite decent budget if we do get a more elite level manager, if that's the word to use. If Celtic can attract an elite level manager, what is that nowadays? And I know that's a question that's been asked a lot in the last few days. What exactly counts as elite? But what about yourself, Mark? What do you think in terms of the budget this summer?
Well, I think in terms of elite managers, I think for the first time in their history, we could probably afford one, Phil. We could afford a 3-year contract on 6-7 million. We could afford that. We're in a position where we could certainly put money by for that. But that brings elite manager ambitions, and that brings guys demanding 40-50 million pound a season transfer budgets. And I don't think Celtic are at that level just yet. The thing, I agree with you, the thing is, it'll totally depend on what kind of manager we get. If we get desperate and it's a Ronny Deila type, then it's going to be loans for Arsenal, for Inter Milan and Man City. It's a fact, we all know that. Now, as I said before, if we've got an angry owner like Desmond,
yep.
Well, I want the fans own the club, no Desmond, but I'm just calling the owner. Because we're the biggest shareholders as the fans, believe it or not. We put more money in per season than what his shares are worth. But anyway, that's me digressing. I think when he gets angry, things tend to happen. And do you know what? When he flexes his muscles, when they put it past Celtic, if they make the right call, I'm just saying, if they make the right call, spending the kind of money that would make Ange look up the road and say, oh fuck, I could have done something with that squad. I could have made inroads. Because I don't think, I'm going to say this right here. I don't think the man will ever manage ever again in the Champions League. Ever. So I think he might look up the road and see us getting beat 9-0 and say, oh, I could have made that 9-1. But I do think if Celtic make the appointment that makes us fall off our chairs and we go, fuck's sake, Celtic, we've done something here.
Yeah.
I think we might just see the biggest transfer budget we've ever seen at Celtic, because I think it was in place for Celtic to really go this year and spend money. And
I think so as well.
I think O'Reilly's going to go, and I think Atai's going to go, and that's circa 20-25 million there. I know there's folks saying you're going to get £30 million. Let's just be realistic, Phil, and let's just look at what's happened before rather than what we want to happen. The 25 million for Cairney is the abnormally. It's not the normal.
Yeah.
Yeah, £8 million for Juranovic is more close to the. I think he's still going to be getting 15 million for him. O'Reilly, I think, is still going to be getting about 8 million. So I think he will get about roughly £20-25 million for the players. And that's going on top of the coffers that you've just mentioned there. And if we can't spend that, when are we ever going to spend it? Because we get £50 million in the bank before we've sold a scarf this season, never mind a season ticket in Champions League money. If you don't spend it now, Phil, you're never going to spend it. You as well just put it in the bank, shutting the doors and just turning us into a club that just aims to finish in the Champions League or UEFA Cup spots every season. Because that would be the case for Celtic. If you're not getting ambition, then what you're actually fighting for, because we us as fans watch football to see the event on the park and see the best version of Celtic. Unfortunately, directors are there to look after the business, and unfortunately, the business isn't always tied into how the team perform on the park in terms of how they pay back their investors. And I'm not entirely sure that qualifying for the Champions League is enough for Celtic. I think beyond that is just they're not all that interested. But shoot for the stars, you might land on the moon, mate. And I think Celtic, I'm hoping Celtic surprise me, Phil, because one thing I've got to be consistent about here, and I've said it on Twitter, I'm going to say it online, I'm going to say it on here. See if Celtic are doing a proper due diligence and do a proper process here and end up with a guy for the City group. That tells me that it's not been a scouting. It's just been they're looking at the tap drawer and fund somebody's phone number at Man City, and they phoned up and they've said who's good here. And just because we got lucky plucking an absolute gem out of Japan doesn't mean you go back there again, Phil. It doesn't mean you go back and hire Kevin Muscat or you get back to the City group, because Man City as a group are they're a big business, big brand, but the top clubs don't go looking at the City group for the managers, Phil.
No, they don't.
There's not a team in that EPL that's got a City group manager. There's not a team in Serie A that's got a City group manager.
Yep.
I don't think there's a team in the French league. You know what I mean? And if there's one in the German league, I don't know. But there's a reason for that, Phil. And the fact chances are working for the largest company in the business in the sector doesn't mean that you're the best in the sector. You know what I mean? It's like if I'm number 2 striker to Karim Benzema, doesn't mean that I'm a good striker. I just happen to be working alongside a very good one. You know what I mean? And I'm not trying to belittle any the Man City group managers, but there's a reason why they've got a group of clubs who I think are very mediocre, and they attract, I think, mediocre managers, because C3 managers are showing absolute real potential. They'll be getting pimped out to the higher clubs across, and they'll be getting picked up after the German clubs, Spanish clubs, Italian clubs, and quite possibly Championship and Premier League clubs. Yeah. To my knowledge, nobody's took any of them on yet.
I think the last one that was under their portfolio that had a Premier League job was Patrick Vieira. I think he's part of the little group because he managed, but he got sacked for Crystal Palace. But that was that this season? It was, because now Roy Hodgson came in. But I mean, the Crystal Palace, I mean, they're obviously sort of mid-table Premier League team. You don't see like Liverpool or like Arsenal. Well, Arsenal, because now that Arteta, he worked for obviously Man City, but then I don't know. I don't deem he would still be now part of the City group essentially. Cause,
I don't think if you work for Man City, you're in the City group, Phil. I think that you're in the City. You're in the City group. I think it's Man City, And Man City's got a spider's web just full of clubs that I think they do it because I think there might be a financial reason why they're doing it. Try to spread their money some in other places, try to make the books look a bit more balanced. I don't think it's because I don't think they've gained any real benefit by having these teams. I really don't. I think they're trying to create a brand.
That is Red Bull, like, the same. Red Bull,
there's like the Dolphin brand and horse racing and things like that. I mean, the best horses come for that. Stable and all the rest of it, and Medalta, you never that never could. But there's reasons why these people do that. You know what I mean? And just there'll be horses in that stable that aren't worth a fuck, but there'll be ones that studied it for £5 million. You know what I mean? £10 million. You know what I mean? And I think it's the same in football, Phil. And I don't think that if it's like the news. I don't know if you remember this, Phil, because it was a couple of years ago and it was part of the dark times. You remember Celtic said they were scouting out to find the very best candidate to come into Celtic and do a review of the club, and they spent thousands of pounds on a scouting network to go out and scour the market to find the best candidate. And guess what happened? They found Gordon Strachan to do it. I just don't think for them. I just don't believe that Celtic hired a company to go out and scout the globe to find the best man to do a review a Celtic, and just happened to be the coach's dad and ex-Celtic manager Gordon Strachan, who's a good
convenient.
Well, I don't think that happens that way. And if Celtic hire somebody for the Man City group, you can say, "Oh, it worked for us before." See, for every manager who's come in for Italy to a club who's performed well, it doesn't mean you go back into that market and it's going to be just because you go back for that market. Use that as a barometer of the type of man that you want and a level of calibre and a professional you want. Don't use that as an excuse to get back into that market, Phil, because you're setting yourself up for a failure. And you're also setting yourself up for somebody to come in and say, you went to Dubai last year and it worked. Don't think it's going to work again. And we fell foul with that, Phil, where, you know, when you repeat the same things here and there again, you're not always going to get those fantastic results. Eventually you're going to run out of luck. I think Celtic lucked it with Ange Postecoglou. And we're hitting the hour mark, so I know we're going to wrap up, mate. But I just want one thing before I go, mate, and then you can just say if you like. And I'll just say this one thing. I know I've spoke for fucking 3.5 hours on the subject and probably blown the life out of you and all the viewers, but
it's all right.
I think that the man is totally forgiven, in my opinion, for taking a job in the most publicised league in the world, and the riches are beyond anything that I could imagine. But the sour taste we've all got, a lot of have got, is the fact that he came in and he played to the gallery. But listen, folks, see, when you go to a pantomime show, the curtain's going to go down at one point. Don't get too attached. And if the next man comes in, starts spinning these stories, take it with a pinch of salt. Don't fall in love with. If you bump into a guy who's an actor in EastEnders in the street, don't think that he's the man you see in telly. The reality is he's doing a job, and anybody that comes into a Celtic manager job is going to have to ring a few bells to chime with the fans. Take it in and get the respect that's due, but don't fall for it, folks, because it's only one person that's going to be hurt, and that's you when the next phone call comes from England. And believe you me, if a manager's successful at Celtic, we've got that much a fan base and that much an interest worldwide that somebody's got to take him.
Aye, indeed. Enough wise words there from the judge, folks, as we wrap up the show. Nicely wrapped up. Just got up to the hour there, Mark. So that was very well done. But yeah, quick bit of breaking news for you. West Ham have just won that Europa Conference. They scored an 89th minute goal, but they're in the 7th minute of stoppage time. But it looks like they're going to do it. It looks like they're going to hold on. So David Moyes, his name was floating about. I think he's definitely not going to be at Celtic now that he's just won a European trophy at West Ham. For many fans, though, that's good news because a lot of fans weren't keen on it. But anyway, speaking of managerial candidates, I know that tomorrow night this discussion will rage on because we've got the TNF tomorrow night. Marc, you'll be on with both the brothers Boyce are on, and Steve will be there.
Right.
Friday afternoon, I believe Steve was doing another one of his mid-afternoon power hours that he's been doing this week. So he's got another one planned for Friday. I don't know if there's one planned for tomorrow afternoon. There might be. They'll just appear whenever they do. I say Friday night. There won't be Bustalgia this Friday, but I'll speak to Russell. So I've got something that we can maybe do. But yeah, see, this is such a hot topic right now. It's the thing that everyone wants to talk about and discuss. So we may as well keep that momentum going. Give Bustalgia a wee break for a week, and and then there's no PMP obviously because the season is over, folks. But we will have an end of season review at some point. I'm sure that was something we're planning on doing. We sort of end the season, look back and stuff. But yeah, that's something that we'll need to put in the back burner for the time being because again, this is dominating the stories right now. So yeah, that's wrapping up this episode of Judgment Day. So we're heading off now. Again, Marc, good show. Enjoyed that one.
It was very good, mate. I really did enjoy that. It's good to do these shows live because I love getting the questions in the community page and answering them. It's great, but when you get follow-up questions, I think that's really good as well. When
yeah, of course,
TNF's the show for the constant questions, but this format I like too. And thanks everybody for viewing and for watching. Sorry, and tell your pals, tell your ma. Don't forget your pies at piesports.com.
Oh yes, indeed.
And
yes.
Don't forget if you're feeling a bit soft at night, ED Pharmacy is the one to go to.
As indeed, bus 10 for that one. Get yourself a 10% discount. But yes, folks, we're heading off now. And tomorrow night, the judge will be back on with brothers Boyce and Steve for TNF. So yeah, we shall see you then. So catch you later, guys.